All right, thanks everybody. Welcome to March 19th EDIC meeting. Call to order. We have minutes from Gwen, and thanks again for filling in for that, Gwen. Anybody have anything to mention? Motion to accept?
So moved.
Seconded by Paul. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's no one here for public speak. Now, I was going to ask Paul to give us an update on telecommunications, and then we can jump into planning stuff. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure. So I'll pass these around. These are copies of the letter that was sent to the city council. This one, we presented this back in February. And also attached to this, on the third page, is an editorial that we got in the Gazette that was written by the editorial board in favor of the proposal, which was great to see. There's not a whole lot of new information in this, but it's kind of a nice summary of the work that we've been doing so far, and some of the questions that we've found the answers to. And from what I understand, the city council is in favor of allowing this to proceed and appear on the ballot in this upcoming election, as far as forming municipal light plant, which we would have to do. Again, it wouldn't cost anything to do that, but it'd be something we'd have to do if we were to move forward down the road.
Well, I saw, I knew a little bit about this, and there was an article in the paper, and then there was, well, one thing that you mentioned I'll bring up in a minute, but one reason I wanted to talk about this besides learning about it is, EDIC can certainly write a letter of support. This definitely falls under economic development, at least indirectly, if not directly. So if that's helpful, I'll draft one a little bit better than the one I drafted the other day. I drafted when I got.
Can you explain to me the finances behind? I hear it's like a $10 to $12 million thing. Will it be a cost savings to the town people eventually?
Well, so that number is very rough.
Yes.
We have to do a study, probably request bids and such, but as a real rough estimate, that is what it could cost. It's probably the highest end. Now that funding would be through most likely a bond, revenue bonds, which would be paid for through the service fees that would be accrued. You cannot pay for a revenue bond through tax increases, and if theoretically the whole thing were to fail, then the city would not be liable to reimburse the costs. It's just part of the risk of the loan, and you pay a little bit higher interest rate, but there's still.
But it's all based on future usage, and so just instead of paying Comcast, it's paying the city.
Yeah.
And then ultimately it'll be a lower cost and potentially better service?
Certainly better service.
Better service.
We haven't come to a decision on what the exact cost would be. We've seen models like in Westfield, they charge $70 for just the internet service, or maybe it's internet and phone, which is maybe a little more than what Charter charges in that market for just that service. I think they're around $60. But it's like night and day kind of service. And we've seen, like Greenfield, for instance, they have a lower cost option at lower speeds, which they did. I'm not sure if it worked out well for them. I think they had some trouble.
Limited streaming and stuff like that.
Well, just as far as the revenue went. I think
gotcha.
I think they went in with like a entry level, like a $40 a month plan, and that probably didn't give them what they needed. But we're actually going to be going up to Greenfield on Thursday to see what they have going on, to see their facility, and talk to those guys, and they're going to come to our next meeting as well.
How far along are they?
Oh, they've built out basically their entire city.
Oh, really?
But they do a little bit different. Their model is to do fiber to pole, but then wireless to home. So they don't actually do a direct connection to each house, but they have a transmitter, a whole bunch of transmitters all throughout their town. And if you sign up for the service, you get like a receiver box.
Gotcha.
My mother lives in Greenfield, and she has this service, and it works great.
Oh, good.
But the speed is a little slower than obviously doing the direct
Yeah.
cable. Although I believe, and I'll ask them about this, that in the future you could do the direct connection. You know, if you found that you weren't getting the speeds that you wanted.
Maybe like a one-time service kind of thing, or?
Yeah, but it is a pretty expensive part of installation, is connecting to the home. So, and they wanted to do maximum footprint as fast as they could, and that's why I went that way.
So who owns that connection from the pole to the house currently? Is it Charter?
Well, they own their line, their
Yeah.
cable line.
And so we'd have to run a new line?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You know, I mean, which, it's not crazy, but does add a good amount of cost to it.
And then maintenance on it.
Yeah, I mean, the maintenance, it's not that big of an expense. You know, even if you have, I mean, the wire itself is not really that expensive, it's just the cost of labor to do it. Once you have it there, you pretty much, you might have to upgrade the equipment on one end or the other, and you can upgrade over time, you know, that equipment to get higher speeds over fiber, even though it's capable now. You know, like, I mean, in a lab, they can get crazy speeds that you can't even comprehend, but, you know, that isn't practical today with our technology. But that's one of the cool advantages of the fiber, is that it really is future-proof for a long time.
The bonds that you're looking at, how long are they, do you know offhand?
Typically, they are, I think, 20 to 30-year
Okay.
bonds. We would probably, I mean, I would like to think that we would pay them off a lot faster than that.
Right.
But, I mean, there's some debate as to whether or not you would want to.
If you don't mind, you wanna mention what you mentioned to me last time about the Easthampton media?
Oh, yeah, so we did get some, well, we have a new member of our board, who serves on Easthampton Media, and he was, he brought up the possibility that Easthampton Media could see a reduced revenue, if we do launch this service, because they base, well, all of their revenue comes from, people who have cable television subscriptions to Charter. And they, even though what we were offering as internet is not, you know, cable television, the thinking is that people might be, it might be a catalyst to have people continue to cord cut and to just go to an internet-only service. So what they are asking is that we find a way to have some sort of fee that we could put onto a bill that would go to them to fund their local television service. And that's something that, you know, we're willing to talk about, but it's not really something that our committee can, you know, really have I mean, we could never commit to anything like that. But I think for them, even if this doesn't happen, they're still in trouble, because cord cutting's happening already.
So what is their annual budget? What are they?
It's like 250 or so grand, I think, is what they bring in.
You know how much they get per subscription?
I think it's about $5,
Okay.
but I think it's based on a percentage, so it might be a little, what they ask for us, it would be $5 a subscriber, which,
Significant.
but there's other ways to look at that. I mean, they're providing a service to the city in terms of streaming like these meetings and having the public, you know, television station, and, you know, whether we will, you know, if this municipality sees the value in that and wants to fund that, it may not necessarily have to come out of, you know, a budget for an internet service.
That's why I was asking,
If it's-
because maybe it evolves into more of a
Yeah.
different committee, different umbrella. You know, whether or not it's ECA kind of stuff, or whether or not, like, what is it more suited towards?
Well, also it highlights one of the difficulties with, I don't know the status now, but periodically we've had a charter, a cable access committee. And I think in the very, very beginning, going back to the mid-80s when cable was new, it was simply that Charter, at that time before it became Spectrum, would up to a certain amount, would fund the cable access. Cable access was probably a little bit cheaper, but whatever, but it wasn't based upon users. My point though is, leading up to it is, every time you negotiate, we're always at a disadvantage We don't know how, so we lock into something that seems reasonable, okay, $5 per subscription, we'll get $250 a year, our budget's $200, but we don't have the information of how the models are changing. They have a vast information, they're nationwide, you know, and, so I would, you know, if, when the time comes down to it, I would just negotiate, I would urge that we go back to a simpler way. You will provide their funding up to a limit, you know, that's reasonable. And that way, cord cut, no one ever thought about cord cutting 10 years ago.
Right.
You know, and it's still small, but I know it's gaining.
Yeah.
When we see in our apartments, all our phone lines, just take them out.
Yeah.
No one, you know, we give them the Verizon number, like, you know, our sheet of utilities to call, and they're like, what's that?
Yeah, right.
You know.
Yeah, so that's an interesting thought, and it's something that I mentioned as well, and I think that it works out even better for them to take out some of that fluctuation and
Yeah.
uncertainty, because how are you supposed to run your organization when you have no idea what you're gonna make next year?
Right.
You know, I guess the thing that's important to me is that people don't have this perception that, oh, if we move forward with this, then somehow we're, you know, putting the stake of death into Easthampton media. You know, really the opposite, I think, is true. I think that having these conversations might help us find a way to, you know, help Easthampton media long term.
Sure.
So,
Okay, so I'll draft a letter for next meeting, and then we'll go over that. Yeah. All right, Jeff, you're on board. On deck.
I think what I will talk about is electric vehicle charging stations.
Hey, there you go.
So, admittedly, I've been a little bit like a chicken with my head cut off to pull this together, but we got the application in yesterday for the Mass EVIP program. So, this is just a quick rendering. So, many things happened after we met initially, and it was all good, but it just took a lot of coordinating. One of the best and most important steps was reaching out again to Eversource. So Eversource has a Make Ready program, and I didn't quite expect the swift turnaround, but basically I reached back out to them, and they're like, oh, we are gonna be in Amherst tomorrow, and we'll stop by. So I was able to, it was a gentleman from Eversource, and then their like subcontractor who's gonna do sort of all these utility improvements across a bunch of municipalities. So they looked at the location here, and that drawing coming around shows, in summary, that they would, Eversource will pull power off the existing box out there to a sub box. You know, I'm not an electrician, but then they're gonna trench to the location of the two charging stations, bring all the utilities up to the point where they then say, okay, we've done our share. They do that at no cost to the municipality. So I asked them for a dollar figure of that, and they kind of balked at offering a dollar figure, but there is a financial component to that, which the city is not gonna have to bear. So the idea, I think we're not unique in this concept, but the idea is that we're gonna pair the Eversource incentive with the Mass EVIP program and put them together to come up with two charging stations here. So there are a couple things that would still need to be negotiated with Eversource, so that we have to sign some documents and we have to grant them an easement. So that would be something that goes to city council along the way. But it all seems manageable, and they're doing this through other municipalities. So that should work. And then when we made the application for Mass EVIP, they're off.
There's a junction underneath that.
A junction, yes.
Yeah.
A junction.
A handhold
Call it a
system.
junction.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That was good to interrupt me, because the good thing about Eversource's program is the utilities that they lay out are suitable for up to 10 charging stations. So I think that they're envisioning this initial investment in a location that could be expanded upon.
Yeah.
So if this actually works, this round, we could be looking at green communities next year or other funding sources as they may, if the Mass EVIP program's still there, we could potentially apply to add on more stations in the coming years.
Stations or poles?
it's like,
What do they call it?
No, not yet.
well,
Stations or times two.
right. I think if you were a resident, you would probably call each one of those a charging station.
Okay,
So like.
so they're saying you could handle like 10 poles.
Yeah, 10 chargers,
Yes.
and each of those 10, in theory, could support two
20
two
units.
vehicles, yeah.
So that's 4 spots though, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
that's 4 spots,
Can I ask a dumb question?
yeah,
Won't be
So,
done.
is there a like, who pays for that? The city
yeah, so that's what I was getting to the,
pays for the,
yeah.
excellent, I love
What
that.
was the answer?
Chamber.
Who pays for the actual, like, I drive up with my Prius and I plug it in, and do I?
The city under this model, I guess.
Well, we haven't gotten that far yet, and
That's
so
crazy.
there is often,
Don't seem that.
there's an often element of grant applications where you're getting it in, and you got some details to sort out. So there apparently are 2 different models. One is some kind of app-based program where the person pulling up has to have the app, and then they pay.
Mhm.
But I think that there is going to be some cost to the city for some of the electrical power going to these stations. In discussions with the mayor, it seems like no other municipality is balking at these programs, and lots of municipalities have these. So the expectation is that the costs incurred by the city for the electrical service will be sort of
And
absorbed into the electrical.
Usage of the building?
Yeah.
And we're in good shape with our energy use because the solar, is that,
Yeah, but I don't know, and I'm learning all about this, so I don't know that there's any way to offset the electrical demand of this with
Right.
solar. I don't know the particulars of this yet.
We're,
But we're doing it.
I don't want, yeah, I don't want to speak out of turn, but what I understand with our solar is we are near our capacity, so we could, any usage that we create is actually gonna be a little bit of benefit.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That it- that it's
I don't
sort of
think we're
like,
gonna create crazy
we're
usage.
creating a lot of our own energy
Yeah.
through the solar, so it's not like we're paying top dollar for energy.
Right.
Our energy is on the cheap end.
There was an issue about putting panels on the new school because of that, right?
We had
weren't
to
using
scale it
enough.
back a little bit.
Right.
Right.
So I remember on the quote for this, there was some line items about like a wireless connection and a service.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that would be so that people would be able to, like if they had the app or whatever, or connect. But I don't remember it being that cheap, and I wonder if the cost of the electricity would be anywhere near what it would cost to charge people for the electricity.
That's interesting, that's true, because it was a monthly or a yearly
It was a
fee.
yearly fee, and it was
Uh.
pretty high, and I don't,
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the city's gonna incur costs to have these, operating.
I mean, I guess if we had Josh here, we'd know what it does cost to charge a car. I mean, it's,
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. I mean, is it minimal? Is it half of gas? Is it
I think
quarter
it
of
comes
gas?
out to the cost of, it's like getting 300 miles to the gallon. So you have to figure out the math on that.
Would we be charging more than the electricity itself costs, so that way we could cover the costs of that service?
I like the way you're thinking. I think it's all items to be determined.
I also think
in
that
terms
so
of the
at the
structure.
beginning of the stage, what's developed in the first 3-4 years is not what's gonna be 5 years from now. There'd be so many more cars and so many more thought-out technology. If we just simply had the infrastructure to grow in the future, that's sort of what we're looking for.
Right,
Yeah.
yes, to start,
Yeah.
without doing this investment, we'll never be able to have that conversation, so.
Yeah, when cable first came in, it was $5.95 a month, and they said it would always be cheap. Who's got cable for $5.95 a month right now?
But like, I mean, if you read the,
Yeah.
the non-political articles about the car industry right now, a lot of the changes are because of electric car. China wants electric cars, all of them by 2030, all new ones. Existing ones will be attrition out, but I mention that because they and GM, once they create that critical mass, 20 stations might not be enough.
Right.
Then again, the model will have time,
Well, I
it
could
won't be
envision,
our responsibility to charge every car.
I could envision it, Dave, looking like parking meters on the street. Everywhere you park, you can plug in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
And maybe even make a little bit of.
And that's how we'll get our
savings, you know?
parking meters.
Yeah.
Which we don't want, but anyway, that's not it, we'll get them.
So there's definitely some questions remaining. Once,
Yeah.
you know, the application was the first step. If in conducting additional research along the way, there's something that, you know, makes this something that no one wants to pursue, we have the chance to put the money back, but I don't see that happening. So the mayor's on board with this. There is, so where we lose, so this city is investing in two elements of this. The Mass EVIP program was only an 80% incentive, so 20% had to be covered by the city. So as of right now, the planning department has one-time funds. If I didn't already say this before, we used to have the 40R map. So the 40R was created in 2009, and the city got a lump sum. A huge chunk went to the boardwalk, and then there's some left. And so my goal of using that money is only to leverage it for a larger project, a larger value. So I think this fits in there. Right now, it's budgeted as 7,150 would be the city's kind of match to make this station work. The breakdown is that the total hardware and installation costs for the two chargers, just the two chargers, is 15,850, and then the program only gives you 12,500. So we're, you know, committing 3,350 to pay for the chargers. The rest of it is there's a one-time network activation fee of $200. That's not a big deal. But then where I think they get you is they have you commit to having the chargers in service for 3 years. So there's a service plan fee, and that's where it's $1,200 per year. So that is where the question is whether there's a way to situate this so that the fees for using it could potentially offset this. We don't know yet, but.
Yeah, some kind of surcharge, I guess, on the electricity,
Right, yep, so we'll continue to flesh that out, but I think at the bottom line, if there's no way to recoup those costs, then we're all in, we're gonna make it happen. So, I don't know exactly when these grants will be awarded, but the timeline that I projected out was if we get awarded and we accept the funds, we have to create a contract with a vendor, we have to initiate the contract with Eversource. So the timeline would be starting that work in July. Then construction, site preparation and construction would be September, October. And then the charging company just comes in and plops them in. So Eversource is gonna pay for the bollards, all the utilities and all the trenching. There would be some painting and some signs that would be accompanying that, but all in all, this works. And then while they were out, while Eversource was here, we went to behind the mills and looked at a site out there that would be potentially feasible for us to be applying for green communities funding. So that application's due Friday. And green communities covers up to 17,500, but they won't pay for the service plans. So green communities actually pays for a little bit more of the charger. So we'll be putting forward another initial investment of approximately $3,000 to make that set of stations go
Oh,
as well.
okay.
So that's two that'd be proposed behind the mills.
And just to clarify too, I mean, obviously, those spaces are technically eliminated as parking spaces. They're only for charging, so the signage basically tells folks, don't park here unless you're charging your car.
Correct. Yep. So I did read the fine print, so one of the spaces does have to be handicapped accessible, or at least striped as such, but that it's not restricted to someone with a handicap placard. So I think the signage is gonna be confusing. You're probably gonna see one of these spots that's often empty, but if we can figure out how to put the signage correctly, that it is available for people with disabilities, but it's not solely devoted to them, so, you know, we could have 4 cars.
Which stripes, you mean next to the spot, right, not in the spot?
Yeah, what I would expect is that there has to be some shift of those 4 parking spaces to the left a little bit to create a discharge aisle here. I think that's the area that we're currently lacking, is there would be a 3-foot wide, clear path here, which is gonna basically take this parking space and shift it over a couple feet.
So the
We can do that
confu-
with striping.
So the confusion you're saying, Jeff, is that anyone could pull in there to charge, handicapped or not,
Yes.
but it's gonna appear that it's only available for handicapped.
That's just my suspicion.
Yeah.
I just think that it says that it's reserved and available for people with disabilities, or if you have an EV car, so.
Yeah.
And again, so are those expandable to more stations or the mill spot?
Mill spot would be expandable, yes. So as of right now, there's a section behind the mills that, it's a little bit funky, but where we were targeting was the area with the least amount of trenching for Eversource. So if I can do this, this here is abandoned building brewery, and then across the parking lot is an existing transformer, so they're gonna go across. And then there's these 4 parallel parking spaces. So right now, it looks like with 2 dual ports, we can service all 4 of those parking spaces.
Were those parallel spots city-owned?
Yep, so the city has clear ownership of all the parking closest to the bike path. A little bit more of a gray area as you get closer to the buildings, but. So, you know, what we're doing is we're being super aggressive. So we're using Eversource, we're using Mass EVIP, and then we're using Eversource and we're using Green Communities. So, coincidentally, and this is the first time I'm gonna say it, but the Lieutenant Governor is supposed to be coming out next, so if you wanna mark your calendar, the Lieutenant Governor is coming out next Thursday at 11:30 to do a little event in Easthampton. A couple different purposes, but we have the bike share, which was a state initiative grant, and the success that we've had with stacking these funding opportunities to create sort of good projects. So I would imagine that this will be a blip in the discussion, but we're actually, and it's all sources, because we're have that one-time fund, which I've been sort of just really diligent on applying to get a greater leverage.
Next Thursday, not this Thursday.
Correct, next Thursday.
So, I
Question.
just wanna go back to clarifying, excuse me, that handicap accessibility for a moment.
Yeah.
Are those traditional handicap spots or handicap if you're charging?
It's easy. Stump the chump.
Well, no, I guess all I'm thinking of is if it's traditional handicap, that means if I'm handicapped, I can park there.
No, I
And
believe
to
you.
charge.
Only for charging, I
Yeah,
think all
only
of them are
for
only for
charging.
charging.
That's how when I read about it, that's how it's just under the same guidelines that you have to have one, you have so many apartments, one has to be handicapped, you have so many spaces.
Yeah.
The threshold is up to 20, you have to have one,
Yeah.
but it's,
So
I
the-
thought it just meant that the port would be a little bit lower or something.
So the confusion could be on both parties where
I'm handicapped, I think I can use that.
handicap think it's a handicap space, but
I'm a
That's
charger, I
right.
think I can use
So,
that.
Yeah.
the spots on Crafts Ave and Northampton are pretty, they're clear that you could only park there if you're charging, and they have like a 2-hour limit maybe it's 3, something,
Yeah.
they have a limit of some sort. I don't think there are handicapped charging spots there at least.
Yeah, I think those were like the first wave that
Before.
got, yeah, and now I think as you pile on state funds, they're looking at, you know, Americans with Disabilities Act stuff.
Well, when we
and-
picked out that location when we went out there, what I liked about it was that it was away from the building. One reason why I liked it is because no one's gonna really wanna park there if they're using the building. Now, maybe if they're using downtown, cause it's a handicapped spot. We have handicap spots towards the
true.
building.
That's true.
Now, if they wanna go to get ice cream, they might say, well, that's a nice handicap spot. It's easy to park. I mean, obviously, they're still gonna walk, I understand, but.
Right.
Yeah, and you know, it might be the way that I just presented it could be part of my own creating the confusion. So what the guidance says is that, so it'll have to be striped so that it is accessible.
Wheelchair accessible.
Right, so there may not actually be any other signage related to any kind of handicap disabilities, but it'll meet the minimum accessibility requirements for someone to pull in and discharge a wheelchair and get to the charger unit and back to the car. Because what it does say is that, where was it? It was, so accessible EV charging spaces can share the existing access aisles. So it can share it, there's a discharge aisle on one side, it could share that, but I don't think that's gonna be the arrangement out here. It goes on to say that the EV charging space may be used by anyone and do not have to be reserved for persons with disabilities. So I guess there may not be actually any kind of handicapped
Basically, what you're
symbology
doing
on the
is,
sign, so it
basically,
may not be that confusing.
you're making it wider,
Yeah,
Right.
you're making a wider space so that if there's two cars, they'll have room for a wheelchair.
right,
Mhm.
That's basically.
essentially, yeah.
That makes sense.
Right, okay. So that's a long-winded way to say it all that. And I wanna give Gwen credit, cause she's been I was bouncing, questions off Gwen, so she's helpful and.
Well, I'm glad to know that, and I appreciate that, that's good.
I made friends with a lady who works for the state.
Oh, yeah?
She did not think I was funny at all. Weird conversation.
So there was, I will work on, what I've been doing every time we apply for a grant is posting it on the planning department's page, but I'm a little bit behind and I wanna focus on getting the other one in on Friday, but, the mayor wrote a letter of support, David wrote a letter on behalf of the EDIC. We had submitted the quote from I solicited an estimate from that same company we had gotten the other draft quotes from, and they were very responsive.
Oh, cool.
We have a budget which shows basically that the city is putting in a $7,150 match. So originally that's compared to, $19,000, but when you add in the costs of the work that Eversource is doing, it's basically leveraging another, probably, my guess was $30,000. Timeline, and then we have at least draft, we have a draft spec sheet on the type of unit that we would be potentially installing. And I'm gonna use the same kind of general format for the Green Communities application for Friday. So,
Wow. Nice
we
work.
may
Good job.
have
Right, yeah.
charging stations come fall.
Well, Josh couldn't make it today, but, we'll let him know.
Yeah.
He's big on this. Cool, thanks.
Holy
Yeah, good
guacamole,
job.
man.
So, we had one meeting to help you out, I don't know how much we helped you, but,
No, it's good. It's good to have, a basis for us to be pursuing stuff,
Yeah.
so it's good.
okay, do you have anything else to
Thanks for
mention?
helping.
Besides, charging station?
No, I just will say that the downtown planning grant is coming, so it's just taking a little bit while to get contracts situated and things like that, so I'm hoping by the next meeting we'll have like some dates of events and a timeline and like
Okay.
a program, so they're drafting a website that will be associated with the project now, but we haven't lifted it all the way off the ground yet. We're pretty close.
And, you know the status of, River Valley Market?
I was gonna ask.
Yes. The planning board met for the second time on March 5th and got a full presentation from River Valley Market, has a full understanding of the project. It certainly appears that most of the traffic related issues have been sort of resolved.
Huh.
They have an extensive solar component to the project, so the planning board worked out some of those details. And, the process is that they were comfortable with the concept moving forward. And so based on that, I have a decision that's pre-drafted and they're
Oh.
meeting tonight.
Oh,
So,
okay. Wow.
so it's been working very well for the larger projects that based on their discussions, I've drafted sort of the sections of the ordinance and proposed findings. And the process has worked very well, that they read through this kind of painstaking And then my expectation is that they should be able to potentially make a vote on that project tonight, presumably to approve it.
And if I'm not mistaken, there was a redesign of the end of that street next to them too, that was
Yeah.
part of the project?
Yep, so that was one of the discussions last time was there, as an applicant, on a private property, they are only in control of certain things.
Right.
All of Route 10 is a state highway, so it's Mass DOT jurisdiction. So what they've committed to doing as part of their project, so it's incorporated into the planning board permit, is coming down Lyman Street towards Route 10, there's a realignment to, instead of kind of shifting off to the left as it kind of is now, it comes to a 90-degree turn onto Route 10, so it's straight.
Mm-hmm.
And they work with Valley Medical to restructure their driveway entrance, so it cleans up that intersection.
Nice.
And there's a sidewalk that would cross in front of Lyman along Route 10 and then traverse along the front of their property. So that stuff is part of their project, that they have control over that.
Good.
The other elements, as presented by the traffic engineer, Mass DOT wants to see a local approval of the project before they advance and start looking at light signal changes and other potential changes on Route 10.
Mm-hmm.
So the planning board talked through that. The traffic study shows that the Lyman Street intersection is useful, and with only that, their project, doesn't have a significant negative impact on traffic. So that's what they need to kind of clear the planning board. And then the biggest discussion piece is River Valley Market wants a left turn lane on Route 10. So if you're coming from town and River Valley's on your left, they want to have a left turn lane in. But that is subject to Mass DOT.
Right.
And subject to road widening requirements and things like that. So the planning board didn't want to sort of hold them up.
And that's a left turn lane, obviously without a light, so you're taking a left based on when you can cut in the traffic.
Right, but it allows the other cars
To keep going.
going north to keep going.
Makes sense.
But the one they've got in Northampton, they have a cop working the track. Any idea who pays for that cop? Is it
Yeah,
River Valley?
They must be, yeah.
There's a cop? Yeah, that's why we never get a little dividend, we're paying for cops.
So,
Over in
North
traffic
King- North
problems,
King
yeah.
Street.
In Northampton? You know what, I've never seen
Not
it.
all the time.
It's because the
Oh.
cars
They-
are zinging by the whole time, it's not slow.
they talked
It's-
about it in
yeah.
terms
It's a rough
of
stretch, yeah.
Thanksgiving, just before
Oh.
big, like Christmas.
Well, the benefit is that
It's
we have the
definitely
light
every
right there,
weekend,
so
though.
You think
people
so,
aren't going
with the
too
traffic
fast.
detail?
Yeah.
Yeah, see,
These days, anyway.
yeah.
But that whole intersection is messed up. They're looking at a circle in that area
Yes.
too.
Are they?
Yeah.
Yeah, accidents, and it's a very fast strip of
It is.
working
Well, they've
and
been,
curved.
pretty clear that they're not exactly on the same timeline they thought they were on in Easthampton, but they wanna be on a timeline where this store is opened before the roundabout work starts in Northampton. So as
Which
far
is
as-
soon,
I think it's like a year or two,
yeah.
so they're still within their window of potentially opening this store before that
Oh.
road work starts.
They're pushing for that, I guess, to avoid loss of business from the road work? That's the thinking?
Part of, I think that's
Shipments
part of their,
people
I
just
think
shift
that's
their
part of their
shopping,
thinking, yeah, yep.
Nothing else, that's it? JK.
That's all for now.
Anything on One Ferry Street from the, not the city side, but from the developer side? Any applications or meetings?
Well, the developer has the land use permit, so he's got a special permit from the planning board, and he has the conservation commission approval for the majority, like the basically the major portion of the site work. And then I believe that there's still financing going on.
Well, the
and
reason why I ask that
preparations.
is typically now on big financing projects, as part of the closing, the building permit is required to be taken out. So what I'm getting at is when you see a building permit application, doesn't mean their groundbreaking is imminent, but it's on its way.
Yeah, I know
And the
that.
application of the smaller permits is contingent for financing now, a lot of times. So, when you see that, you'll see where the financing is.
Yeah, well, they had to go through MEPA, so the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act.
Uh-huh.
And so they got the necessary certificate that they needed through MEPA, which is a pretty arduous, significant step.
Yeah.
And that was what I understood, they wanted to get over that hurdle before they closed.
Well, sure, 'cause even that one, you have to, when you apply for NEPA, it's like, there's like a cycle, you have to apply by a cycle.
Yes.
And then based upon that cycle is when you're heard.
Yeah.
So, that's awesome. you know.
So we will, you know, there are some of the preliminary steps being taken, so, we have, they want to power building number 1, which is right at the top of Ferry Street, right on the road, so they wanna get power to that, but they need an easement from the city to cross over the bike path area. So we'll be formulating some of the easement process with city council, and then, you know, to do some of the road work on Ferry Street, the proposal is to, take the utility lines and bury them. And to do that is a pole relocation, so we're in the early stages of setting up the pole relocation process through city council, so we're trying to start some of these basic but time-consuming parts
Well,
of
they
the
are,
project.
you know, that easement, 'cause that comes out of Berlin, Connecticut, and, they're not bad, but, you know, it's 3 to 4 weeks at
Yeah.
least. Our little easement was like 5 weeks.
Right, so that's what we're starting to look
Yeah.
at that timeline over the next
Yeah.
5 to 6 weeks, there's a lot of stuff that will start taking shape.
Cool, good.
Good job.
Anyone else have anything to mention? Bring up?
No, not this.
About Anthony?
Oh, well, so I was interested in the school building reuse, and I understand that there's supposed to be a public forum for people to, present like ideas. And I'm looking at the city website, I haven't seen anything, I heard it's gonna be this month. Does anybody know anything about that?
Didn't you say that was tied in with the?
Yeah, that's the
It's
downtown
more of a
planning
strategic-
grant, yeah.
Downtown
strategic
planning
plan.
grant.
Yeah.
So instead of doing this separate thing, they applied for this big grant, which is this company who set up the website and all the community-based stuff. So there won't be a separate building organization until they do this study.
Right,
And then we'll take that information and set up a future use committee?
yeah,
Or-
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
RFP, they come up with the RFP and stuff like that. So this,
Right.
this grant is taking care of that other
So
process.
the grant's looking at the whole downtown and with an eye to these vacant buildings. And to Casey's point, I think what they do is they make some recommendations, but then that gets handed over to this reuse committee that gets created probably a couple of years down the road even.
yeah, probably.
And then that reuse committee takes those, and that input, then probably some public meetings to get some input, and comes back with a recommendation, I assume, to the mayor and city council. But I think that's a couple of years out, I thought.
Well, they said once we got that planning study going, it could begin, like, those kinds of conversations, at least in the earlier stages, might be this fall.
Yeah, the report that we expect to get out of the downtown planning study should be August, September, which will be sort of that first glimpse at all the public input as to what to do with Center, Pepin, and Maple Street. And then, I think we talked about this, one of the expectations out of that would be, recommending forming the future use committee.
Right.
At some point. The only thing I wasn't sure where you maybe heard that, cause we're trying to wait until we're ready to just do, so we have like a media blitz kind of strategy where everything goes out all at once. So we use the press release, the press picks it up, Facebook, the mayor does her video, so like you will not miss the announcement when that's happening.
Coordinated effort.
Unless it was about the school building committee,
No,
the new
No.
school, no, okay, alright.
No, okay.
When is Mission Cantina gonna open?
Tell me when you find out.
Okay,
I
I'll
heard
just
August.
stand outside the bars.
Permanent employee.
Yeah, so remind me where all these places are going, because Vera,
Michigan Tina is that
Mission's going
going?
in Casitas.
La Casita.
Right.
in the back.
And the dance
Yeah, with the
studio.
court-
Actually,
with the
next
courtyard.
door.
And the
Courtyard,
studio
yeah.
too?
That's for Vera Pisano.
Vera
No, no,
Cruz
I'm
on it.
sorry.
Vera was on it.
No, no,
On
no,
Union.
Mission Canteen, you asked Mission
Yeah, yeah.
Cantina?
Yeah,
Sorry.
they're taking 2 spaces?
Hmm.
Who?
Because they built that storefront right next door to the little courtyard.
I didn't think that
Yes.
storefront was them,
I
that
don't think
storefront's
so.
something else.
Are you
Is it
sure?
not?
I don't think so. I thought,
90.
I'm so confused about that.
94%, the
I
storefront
didn't-
is something else.
that's what I heard too. It's just a,
Huh.
It's
It's
so
a
attractive and
coincidence that
very
they're
unlike
remodeling
Mission
at the same
Cantina,
time.
when you go.
Yeah,
It's a
the
contrast.
storefront is something totally unrelated,
that's my
I believe.
understanding.
Oh, I thought it was a dining room, oh.
No, no, I
Yeah,
think
it's-
Mission Cantina is only the building in the back with
See,
the
that
courtyard.
building
Okay.
where the dance strip, those are 2 buildings, they're 2 owners.
Yeah.
Right,
And so, and there's one going on Union Street where the comic store is.
Vera Cruz on it.
It's the whole
Is that
space,
First floor.
the whole first floor, which is like 2/3 of what you see,
Yeah.
because part of the
The
first
stairs
floor
are-
got cut out with the stairs, okay.
and comic book store is going to Cottage Street, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
And there's an Ecuadorian place, I think at the planning meeting tonight, right? They're presenting where Adamos was?
Yeah.
In the
That's,
plaza.
yeah, that's La Vera Cruzana is coming before the planning board tonight on
Oh,
Union Street,
okay.
and then El Camelito, because it's going from a restaurant to a new restaurant, it's not coming before the planning board.
Okay.
That's out,
They don't need to.
Maybe it was-
in Bach Plaza.
The restaurants are great, but do they run into an issue on Union parking?
So no, technically, the way the zoning works is that if you have an existing space in a building and you're utilizing that existing space, you're not required to provide parking on site, which is actually one of the, it's a very beneficial thing that our downtown has, is that these uses can come and go without having to provide parking on site, because they would never be able to provide parking. It's part of the downtown planning
currently it's
study is, you know,
not an issue.
we didn't wanna look at the schools by themselves and just say, what do we wanna do with the schools? We're gonna look at how do they fit within the bigger context
I
of
mean,
Union
The
Cottage.
benefit is, I mean, the downside from a business perspective is where you're gonna park when you go to this restaurant. But the beauty of it is the owner of the building and the owner of, is it the same? Or is it, no, it's different, isn't it?
right.
The
But,
Rite Aid parking lot.
yeah, but think of it this way,
Different owner.
Different part,
take
yeah.
Manchester's, the side that's for sale. Under the current zoning, whoever goes there doesn't have to worry about parking. But obviously, under the old way, it would be a change of use, and that square footage, there's no way in heck you'd be able to provide parking.
Right, but so,
So-
I agree with that point. They don't have to worry about parking from the standpoint of approval from the city. They've
Right.
gotta worry about parking from where my customer's gonna
Convenience.
Oh, I
park.
Yeah.
understand, no, but it's like a chicken egg thing though, I guess
Right.
you gotta get them here, then you solve the next problem, right?
Right.
You know,
Right, right,
You know what? They wouldn't be coming here if they thought that was an issue.
right.
Well,
I know, but
yes
They
and no,
wouldn't.
sometimes you don't
where's the
foresee
fourth
everything,
car gonna
right?
park?
I mean, they're experienced restaurateurs. They would,
Well, no,
I know.
I'm,
Where's the fourth car gonna park?
they'll find a floor.
Well, I mean, yeah, there'd be no restaurants in Northampton if parking was.
Yeah,
That's
they'll
right.
find a spot.
Well, yeah, but in fairness to Northampton, they've got a parking garage. It's pretty convenient
They
when
got
you
two.
cut through Thorns and you can get anywhere on Main Street. But,
well,
that's
hopefully,
We get
But
10,000
if-
people during
from a-
cultural chaos.
but from a timing point of view,
Yeah.
if these things come forward before,
You know.
before the grant can address some of this stuff. You know, if there's issues during the study, hopefully they'll be recognized. If there's no issues, that'll be recognized too.
Yeah.
Parking garage would be great. Center Street parking garage.
Right, but I don't think you get to any kind of parking garage discussion without having enough business to drive a demand and a problem and shortage of supply, so I
But,
think,
but it's back to Dave's point of chicken and egg, and part of that chicken or the egg is what you're gonna lose on Union Street with reconstruction.
yeah, the upper area is, there's like no loss on the upper area, the only loss is really in front of the Family Dollar lot.
And it's really,
And-
and it's not that many spaces,
Right.
really.
I heard 26.
Did that not?
Wait, what are you guys talking about, losing spots?
On Union Street.
The
Sorry.
Union's
Oh,
Liberty.
for the regions, okay.
Right.
Haven't we talked about that open?
They'll lose 26 parking spots on Union Street?
No.
There's some
That
number,
can't be real, right?
Are there 26 spots to be
Sorry,
held?
was
I don't think 26
Right.
is the right number, but I
Okay.
think you have to envision where, it's one thing to just say that. But I
Right.
think you have to see where they are lost and put it into a context. So if you look at Family Dollar has like 95 parking spaces in that parking lot. So if you remove the 4 that are in front, you know, that can be absorbed.
Right, right.
And then the loss is really in front of Family Dollar, there's 4 that get lost, and I think going up that side of Union, there are 2.
From the hair salon?
2 in front of the hair salon, which you look and there's parking for the hair salon, and
Makes
then there's
sense.
1 or 2 in front of the Union
Right.
Street package store and Pride, and then you look at those 2 properties and you have parking
Yep.
interior. So
Makes sense.
there's a way to rationalize some of the loss, but I think it all feeds into looking at what do you do with Center Pepin. And I think that's where what the grant focus was, what do we do with Center Pepin? But we need to look at the whole picture. So if we see a loss of parking and we see no municipal lot on Union Street, you know, it kind of pushes you to think, you know, a certain scenario for Center. You know, what if you could
Well,
provide
that
50 or
brings up-
60 parking spaces there?
You were talking about blight in the city, you know, does that mean that Moriarty loses his, you know, eminent domain, he takes that, and that becomes full-time parking? That would be nice.
Major
Yeah.
eyebrows going on.
Well, you know, the other thing, I'll just throw this out there, so the church that fronts on Main Street but backs up to Rite Aid, you know, I think that there needs to be a look at some creative options. So there's large parking areas that are mostly empty
Yeah,
most of the time.
yeah.
So there's like a short period of time, especially on Cottage Street, there's a short period of time when it's really jammed up, but the lot here is empty. So, you know, if we can somehow change people's mind that there's free and available parking here, you could start to get people here. And then on Union Street, it might be a little bit more creativeness to come up with a shared parking arrangement where, you know, that church lot is open and available in the evenings and weekends or something. Cause there's 70 parking spaces that are empty there.
So the downtown planning grant is gonna include some of these kinds of considerations.
Parking strategies, yes, yep.
This will not go
But what
unnoticed.
complicates the Union Street issue with the church is it's private property, so
Right.
it becomes some sort of handshake agreement or whatever.
I think there's a way to do the handshake or make it a more formal agreement with there's
Maybe, lease and meters.
Right.
Mhm.
something.
Or kiosk or
Yeah.
something.
It's not gonna be easy, but
Hey, and my new line is, this isn't our first rodeo, but that doesn't mean it won't be a rough ride.
Would you like me to put that in minutes?
Sure.
Okay,
it's good. No, the planning grant should be very useful.
Yeah.
To talk through some of this
There was
stuff.
something else going tonight too, the planning board discussion or approval, I forget.
The other thing, if it's from the agenda, there's a, potential request to change the Mill Industrial Zoning District to have a 0 lot line. So something has been uncovered with One Ferry that they wanna create lots, separate lots within that 6-acre parcel. And to do that, they need to draw a line next to a building, which you can't actually do because the setback's 15 feet. So there's a discussion of that, and see if that's a zoning amendment that would run through the city council ordinance process.
Hmm.
So there's some other things.
alrighty,
Sounds good.
only thing I have to mention is, our cycle of meetings is, next meeting will be, April 16th. I won't be here, so you can move on without me, which is fine, or we can push it out to next week. That's school vacation week.
So that's April 23rd is your proposal.
Yeah, well, it's up to you guys, you know, whatever you guys want.
April 23rd sounds okay to me.
Okay,
I'm not busy.
so we'll have it on April 23rd. And then Josh couldn't make today, I'm not sure why, but I did respond that.
Well, his work does
Yeah,
his
he-
thing on
Oh,
Tuesdays
right.
now.
And he didn't mention, I said, get back to me, and I said I would just look into maybe a later start, 4:15 or 4:30. He didn't get back to me, so I don't think we have to worry about it right now. And then but I will email him. I think the 23rd will not fall, and he said it was like every other week he had those meetings. So, maybe I'll just stay in touch with him, you know, and see how it goes.
And Dave, did you manage to get in touch with Aaron?
No, I did not, and I forgot, and you know, and I remembered as I was leaving my driveway, and I saw him leaving his house, 'cause he lives
Mm.
across the street from me.
Mhm.
I was like, "Shit, I was like, But anyway, he's not here, so I will email him tomorrow, and Josh said there is like it might be written down somewhere, but there's a policy of 3 meetings in a row or absences, but we won't start it till after I meet him, after I
Sure.
reach out to him. But he hasn't been in 4 meetings, so, I don't know, maybe his class schedule changed or whatever. Well, I will follow up on that.
Great.
Okay.
And I'll entertain a motion.
I move we adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Aye.
All in favor? Okay, thanks much, guys.
Good.
Shut the.